What up, everyone, and welcome to Amateur Hour, a sports history podcast where each week we're going to dive into the history of the sports of today and yesterday. This is your host, Sarah, and let's get it started. Before we go back to the past, let's look at what's happened recently. The NWSL season is coming to an end with their playoffs starting on October 16th, with games between Houston versus Kansas City and San Diego versus Chicago. The NFL has been taking a closer look at their concussion protocol due to Dolphins quarterback Tua being cleared to play after he was concussed and the uproar that followed. The NCAA football season has been off to a strong start, with a lot of the big name teams doing what they do best, winning. The USA women's basketball team won the gold during their World Cup when they defeated China. And for all of those baseball fans out there, the Mariners have finally ended their 20-year playoff drought. So, like I mentioned, this is a sports history podcast. So, what better to start with than the history of sports itself? So, we'll start with the dictionary definition, which is an activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against another or others for entertainment. But that's the dictionary definition. Sports are so much more than that. Sports aren't just fun activities that you can practice and get really good at, even though that's part of the fun. They are deeply rooted in countries' cultures, and not even that broadly. For example, here in America, football has states divided every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday from September to February. Premier football, soccer, has the UK up in arms from around now till the spring. I don't know when rugby season is, but I know their fans go just as hard. Sports give people a reason to cheer for something. They can also be used politically. For example, the US track team during the '68 Olympics on the podium. The Olympics as a whole are something we will dive into a little closer to when they're happening. But as you can see, sports are bigger than just the people we see on our TV screens all year round playing the sport that we grew up loving. They can really change and inspire the world. But before we go to the future, it's important to know the past. So, how did the concept of sports come around? Truth is, no one can pinpoint when exactly sports started because it was always assumed that people, specifically younger children, were always running around and wrestling and just competing in some sense. A matter of fact, archaeologists found that ball games were common among ancient peoples of different regions, such as the Aztecs and the Chinese. And of course, we know the ancient Greeks who started the Olympic Games in 776 BCE. And since the history of sports is so short, I'm going to give you a little bit more of what I want to do with this podcast. Here, we'll be talking about sports of past and current times, popular sports such as basketball, soccer, hockey, and some lesser known sports such as squash, fencing, and polo. We will also be diving into sports from all over the world. For example, sumo wrestling in Japan, futsal in Brazil, and rugby from Australia, New Zealand, and Papua New Guinea, just to name a few of the sports and the regions they come from. We will end each week with a quote from an athlete. This week's is "The only way to prove you're a good sport is to lose." Ernie Banks, American baseball player. And with that, I say, remember, even the amateurs can become pros. See you next week.